Hello. Rashid Jovi said, never interpret wrong if you could not understand the actual meaning of my philosophy. I like to start off this video presentation on data interpretation with this quote. Well, it has to be interpretation which is going to be important. Well, what is there in this video lecture? First, will have a discussion of converting fractions to percentages. Why? Well, a data interpretation question talks about data in a graph, a pie chart, or a bar chart, and basically we need to interpret the data given correctly and later on do the requisite calculations to find the answers. Now, for doing the calculations little faster, we would be requiring basic techniques with percentages, that is to convert fractions into percentages. Thereby, we will first revise this thing wherein we will talk about how to convert a fraction into percentages. And then followed by, we would be solving questions on a pie chart and a bar chart and a line chart. Finally, towards the end, there is a question which is given, which is on a table, and there is a graphical video on a pie chart. Okay, coming to the introduction, as I was telling you before as well, what happens in a data interpretation question is data is given in form of a table, chart, or a graph, and it is followed by few questions. Now, the key to get the correct answers is to interpret the data given in the table or maybe a chart or a graph correctly, and there is why interpretation of the data is of paramount importance. Let's say what I mean is, let's say if we talk about a question wherein the data was given, wherein the sales were given monthly, and towards the end they're asking us to calculate what was the yearly sales. So one has to be like not get carried away but realize what is given in the data correctly. And towards the end then it talks about then moreover how the questions are made difficult with regards to data interpretation is they involve calculations. So when the questions are involving calculations, so definitely we require, let's say, if we know how to convert fractions into percentages, it's going to be something which is going to be useful for us to do the calculations faster. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing we have been talking about that we would be discussing, we would be revising how to convert fractions into percentages. So this is not entirely new. We all of us know it, as in we talk about what is this fraction half. If we convert it into fraction into percentages, it is going to be half into 100, which is a 50%. So we know such things, but sometimes what happens in questions is they intentionally ask, like, okay, they say 7.69% of something. Now 7.69% of something would mean 1 by 13 of that thing. So therein, for questions like this, and which is quite prevalent on data interpretation questions, we need to be like memorizing fractions from wherein like we start from a half and a 1 by 3, and we should be remembering it, let's say till the denominator is like 1 by 20. Okay, and it's not that this is something new. We know most of them, and some of them we are, let's say, we need to remember, and once we remember and we make up remember them as a part of our calculations, then they are always handy. Okay, let's quickly get through with these things. Okay, we have a half which is going to be a 50%. If I further half it, it's a 1 by 4, it's a 25%. If I half it again, it's a 1 by 8, which is a 12.5%, and so on. I would get 1 by 16 as well. So I'm done with these, which is, and all of us know it. And then I pick another fraction like a 1 by 3, it's a 33.33%. And again, if I half it, it's going to be 1 by 6, which is going to be 16.66%. Again, further, if I half it, it's going to be representing 1 by 12, which is going to be 8.33%. Once again, if I do it, I'll get a 1 by 24, which is going to be 4.16%. So half and the fractions following half, and 1 by 3 and fractions following 1 by 3 are very simple. Similar is going to be the case, even more further simpler is like a 1 by 5, which is a 20%. And then if I do 1 by 10, it's going to be a 10%. 1 by 20 is going to be a 5%. So we are done with them. These were never causing a confusion for most of us. Okay, so now the new ones. Let's say we talk about 1 by 9. So 1 by 9, if I remember it for once, it is a 11.11%. And similarly, I go for 1 by 11, it is a 9.09%. Once I know them, it is going to be useful if I need to calculate 1 by 18, if I need to calculate 1 by 22. Okay. Similar lines, I would be interested in memorizing what is 1 by 7. So 1 by 7 is going to be 14.28%. If I further half it, it's going to be 1 by 14, which is a 7.14%. Okay, then we need to remember you can say the ugly ones, the three fractions here, 1 by 13, which is a 7.69%, 1 by 17, 5.88, and 1 by 19, which is a 5.26%. So once I memorize all of them, it is going to be useful. So if I look in retrospection as well, we were knowing all of them, only like 4 or 5 we were not knowing, and that was causing a kind of a impediment, I would say, for faster calculation. Now, once we get to know them, we need to memorize them. It should be useful for doing the calculations faster. Okay. Now, once we are through with the converting fractions into percentages, we would be talking about the different kinds of questions we get. So, the data might be represented on a pie chart. It might be represented on a bar graph. It might be on a line graph, and it can be a table form as well. So, these are the common ones which you get on the exam. Now, let's go through one by one. Okay. Let's start with the pie chart. So, what happens in a pie chart, as we can see over here as well, is okay, so we have a full circle which is a 360-degree, and if we take like sectors from it, which will be like representing different angles. I think let's take an example over here. This what this thing is saying over here. It talks about ice cream parlor which is selling 4 flavors of ice cream, which happen to be strawberry, blackcurrant, chocolate, and vanilla. Now, and then it says that all the flavors contributed to the revenue, the total revenue, which happens to be 1,20,024. Okay, and it's about per month. Okay, so this is they talk about, but then in the question it says this was before the lockdown, and what happened in the lockdown is the revenues got halved, and when the revenues got halved, later on they did happen to draw this pie chart representing the various flavors, how much percentage they were contributing to the revenue. So if I happen to look at strawberry after the lockdown is contributing 33.33%. Now, if I remember it from the fractions, so 33.33% is 1 by 3. Now, if I go with the pi, how much pi it is having on this circle, it is 1/3 of 360-degree, which is going to be a 120-degree. Is it okay? And similar is going to be a 120-degree with the vanilla, and chocolate here is a 25-degree. So 25-degree would mean 1/4 of 100, which is going to be a 1/4 of 360, which is going to be a 90. Okay, so this is what a pie chart is. Okay, so this was a basic with the pie chart. Now let's have a look at the question, how the questions are going to be framed on. Okay, so this is a very simple one. We are looking at the graph remains same, and it talks about, let me read the question. It says, how much is the revenue generated by the sale of strawberry and blackcurrant flavored ice cream after the lockdown? Okay, so it refers to 2 flavors which we need to consider. It talks about strawberry. Strawberry we know is what? It is a 33.33%. Okay, there is where this fractions is going to be useful, because we need to remember this 33.33% is 1/3. Okay, and when we happen to look at black currant, so black currant contributes like a 8.33% over here. Now 8.33, if I remember, and which you would start remembering once we memorize those fractions, it is going to be a 1 by 12. So simply what we need to do is, instead of calculating like adding 3.33% and adding to it 8.33% and summing it up and taking the percentage out of the revenue, we would simply deal with fractions. We'd say, okay, this is a 1 by 3, this is a 1 by 12. If we happen to add them, it is going to be a 5 by 12. Okay, this seems to be very simple. Now, once we are through with this 5 by 12 is the contribution into the revenue for the revenue after the lockdown with the two flavors. So I simply need to do 5 by 12 of the revenue by half. Okay, the revenue initially used to be 1,20,000 something. Now it is going to be halved after the lockdown. That's what the question is referring to. And if I calculate it, it's going to be 25,005 rupees. Okay. So let me look back what we did. Nothing much. We just simply converted the percentages into fractions, added those fractions, and then finally took out the multiplied it with the revenue. And that's what we need to do. So pie chart seems to be simple. Okay, now let's have a look at the next one. So the next one happens to be a bar chart. Okay, so what is this bar chart? Let's have a look at this. This is talks about four cities. We are referring to Shimla, Delhi, Dehradun, and Lucknow. And it refers to 3 months, as in the blue is indicating February, and orange is April, and this gray is August. And it talks about the average temperatures in these months. So as we can see, okay, it seems to be realistic over here. Shimla is like a 5 degrees in Feb, which seems to be cold, and Delhi is not bad, it's 11, it's also cold. Dehradun happens to be 10, and Lucknow is like 14. Okay, don't worry, it's the figures are generally not realistic, but at times they can be realistic as well. The idea is to learn it and use it in realistic figures at some point of time. But there's a we are not referring to the realistic figures right now, but it seems to be realistic. Okay, let's have a look. What does it the question is asking? Now it talks about, it says, what is the difference between the average temperature of Delhi and Shimla? Okay, so the average temperature and the difference. Okay, so it's a simple question here. Shimla, if I refer to Shimla, I need to, how do we find average? We need to sum up the values and we need to divide it by 3 because it is referring to 3 months. So if I happen to look at Shimla, so if the temperatures of Shimla were like 5, and okay, it has to be what, 28? You can see it is like just above the middle thing, so it has to be like a 28. It was like a middle of 25 and 30, but slightly exceeding the middle, so it has to be a 28 over here. 28 and a 5 is a 33. 33, and if I add what, it is a 24. Okay, so 33 and a 24 is going to give me 57. If I divide 57 by 3, I'm going to get a 19. So this is, if you see at the calculations as well, it is showing Shimla is having an average temperature of 90. Similarly, I would have found the average temperature of Delhi, which is going to be, if I refer it here, it's a 11 and a 40, which is a 51. If I add them and a 36, it's going to be 87. 87 by 3 is going to be 29, and nothing much then. The difference has to be 29 minus 19. It is going to be a 10 degrees, and that's going to be my answer. So things seems to be simple because at the moment it's a, we are referring to basic, it's a simple question, but it's can get complicated at times. Okay, but for the moment we are just trying to understand the things. Okay, let's move ahead. Okay, the next one. So what is the next one? This is a line graph. And if I happen to look at the line graph, it talks about this blue line is showing the profits a milkman is making. And okay, over the years, like a 2001, 2002, 2003, and a 2004. Okay, so what is the question asking? Let's have a look at the question. Now, what does it says? It says by what percentage the profit percent increased from 2001 to 2002. Okay. So if I happen to look at the profit percentage, what the line graph is referring, pointing out at the moment is 25%. And what happened in 2002? 2002, it became a 40%. So something increased as a profit increase from 15 oh sorry, 25 to 40. So what was the increase? Increase was 15. 40 minus 25, that is a 15. But what is the initial value? You always do increment over the initial value. So what is the initial value? Initial value is 25, and we multiply it with 100. It is going to be like what? 60%. Okay, and we can refer to the solution given as well on the right side. Okay, now have a look at the next one. It says in which year the profit percent decreased more sharply. Okay, so if I refer to the line graph, there were two instances in years where the graph is coming down, which shows a decrease. Now, at some questions in the exam, okay, if we want to do it, let's say without calculations as well, definitely we can do it with calculations as well, putting out the values and going in for the decrease, how much it decreased over an year. Or simply we can look at the slope of the graph. If I happen to look at the two slopes, as in a slope which is coming first and the slope, you can see the gradient is much there. So it is sloping more. So what does it mean? It is going to be like 2000, 2014, it is going to be a sharper decrease. And that is what my answer is going to be. Okay. Okay. Now, what is next? We talked about the summary. Okay. So what did we covered in this session? What did we cover? We started by discussing the various types of graph, how to interpret them. We went into a revision of converting fractions into percentages, and thereby we went on from discussion, that is we started with a pie chart, then we talked about a bar chart and a line chart. Okay, and then finally we had this graphical thing as well. I That was something to add. It was like an icing on the cake, I believe so. Okay, let's work on the next thing. Okay, so what we have in store for the students, we have a practice question here, which is a table question, and we have, okay, so what does it talk about? Let me explain it. I believe the students would be solving it, but for us, let's explain it once. So what does it talk about? It says there are like five student A, B, C, D, E, and they happen to write a class test out of 50, which the marks are given in the first column. You can say 45, 35, 40, 25, and 20. And the second test, again, the marks have been written in the column. And then further, there is a internal assessment. And then finally, it's the external assessment. Okay, so it's a class test, internal assessment, and external exams. So many times we get a number of chances to passing the exam, that I would say. Okay, well, what is given over here, it is not they just going to be added and calculate the average or something. What does it talk about? It says for a particular subject, two class tests contribute 10%, okay, and an internal assessment contribute 30%, whereas the external contribute 50%. So what I need to do is I need to sum up the class test, calculate the 10% of it, and then go in for the internal assessment, calculate the 30%, and finally we need to do the external, we calculate the 50% and sum it up, and then finally we can find the marks which are going to be scored by this student A. Okay, so that was an example for this. The answer is not given. I hope the students will find it. Already I gave a lot of hint to solve it, and again it's a very simple question. I'm not denying it. We are just working on the basics over here. Okay, let's go to what is, okay, as for the references, we have a book on SLLL, which is a book on which has a quantitative aptitude and the English section. Both the verbal sections are there, and it is a very useful book, which SLLL, the fact trainers at SLLL have taken like some years to make come up with such a good book. At times we go in for books in the market, but I would say this is a really good book. So we should be looking into it. And you can ask your trainers over there in the class to guide you where you can find this. They can share the PDF. Okay, again, data interpretation. There is a good book by Arun Sharma, and it's for CAT exam. So you few examples from I referred what from this book as well, and it's a good book. But for students preparing for CAT, otherwise, like students preparing for Exams which are slightly less difficult than CAT can have a look at the examples, and that should be good enough. Finally, the video reference is there, so you can have a look at this video which was from the YouTube, and that was where I solved this graphical question. Okay, so coming back and just putting it back, what the video lecture was all about, I hope we referred to the data interpretation questions and we talked about how to solve them and in minimum time, because towards the end, it is once we interpret it as well, it needs to be solved in minimum time. And that's where the time constant is important when it comes to exam. And we refer to different kinds of question, as in like a bar chart and a pie chart and a line graph and a table. Towards the end, it is we worked on the table as well. So that's how things are. Now you can say at times that the questions are difficult, and here we what we solved were like simple. So I would talk about, I would say we were working with the basics. That's what the thing we wanted to work on. Now with regards to complexity, there is no end to complexity. But the thing is, whatever the basics we know, if we are thorough with our basics, it's going to be we can solve questions. And one thing I want to put it last is never try to just read the question and come to the answering the questions. It has to be we need to interpret the data first, and that's where the name data interpretation is of importance. I hope you enjoyed the video. That is Gaurav, and I'm signing off. Thank you.